Hi, and welcome to another edition of Real Lives. Today, we're talking to Richard Beck, and I've really been looking forward to speaking to Richard. Now, Richard is not a household name. Let's get that out first. But he has been responsible and has helped many people on the way to become household names. Now, Richard, you are founder of Supernova Entertainments and director of Global Touring for Apollo. Did I get that right?
You got it right. Hello, Jackie.
Excellent.
Good to
Hi,
talk
how are
to
you?
I like the bit that you said, you're responsible for something. I mean, I'm not really responsible for anything.
Well, you've been a huge influence in making certain names household names within the music industry. I think that's fair to say. And I'm going to let you explain this and name drop till Christmas, if you like. So you've got the floor.
I mean, responsible. I'm in the music business, Jackie, and I have been for 30-something years now, showing my age. And I still think I'm 21. I still think that I'm just starting doing what I'm doing. I still think it's a hobby, and I think we'll go on to that. I mean, it has to be to do the hours and the lack of structure and cohesive long-term security that the entertainment industries throw out. I think it has to be a passion point. It has to be a love. So to say that I'm responsible, it does actually make me feel quite scared. But of course, it is. and there are a lot of artists and a lot of major events around the world that have happened with me and other people, and have left an indelible imprint on modern music culture. Sort of starting off in the early days, moving through to my management company, managing artists through to concert promoting. I've been the right guy in the right place at the wrong time.
I think you're being very modest, I have to say.
I think you have to be on these things because there'll always be somebody that watches it and turns off if you're being too much of an a-hole.
And I mean, you say that you feel 21, but you've been in the industry for 30 years, but you did start at 17.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I mean, I always knew, Jackie, that this is what I wanted to do. I knew from the age of 13 what I was going to do in my life. It was very simple. I used to be a huge music fan. And spent all my pocket money every week at our price, going down and buying the new album of the week. I just used to collect singles and albums. And I knew at 13 when I bought Frankie Goes to Hollywood's Welcome to the Pleasure Dome, this beautiful double vinyl record that was so anticipated. They'd had two singles, Relax and Two Tribes before, and it was actually opening this vinyl record, this double album, and listening to Trevor Horn's production. It was the first time I ever thought, that's what I want to do. It was so sumptuous what he was doing. If it was a film, it's a Spielberg production. It's epic. It was undercut by the anger of Thatcher's Britain and youth culture. It was a poignant moment that still, even now, makes my hairs stand up when I think about the impact that record had on me. And I knew there and then that day that that's what I was going to do. I had to somehow be in the music business. So for the remaining sort of 3-4 years of my mandatory education at a very good but strict Catholic boys' school in London, the London Oratory School, later made famous by Tony Blair's kids who went there. And it was a state school, but it was constantly getting academic result way higher than the private schools that were there. So I was very lucky to get in there. My stepfather blagged me in, which was good. I mean, we had to pretend we were Catholic, and that was fun. But anyway,
cat's out the bag.
Yeah, that won't work. And then, interestingly, in the music business, I pretended I've been all religions. I'll be anything for long as it gets me. Hey, all right, Rabbi, how are you?
I think you saying, the impact of that record when you were
Mm,
13 just
mm.
really highlights how music affects our lives anyway, and how it shapes our lives and how it influences our lives.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it certainly did me, and I've seen how it's affected other people, from artists through to fans. The two are indelibly linked. There isn't one without the other.
Yeah,
I've got lots of
absolutely.
I got lots of cassettes, CDs, and MP3 files going through the years of artists that never made it, that were as relevant as U2 or In Excess, but they never made it because there was something missing. That you need
Yeah.
everybody that's ever made it at a level has got something different. Getting there and blustering your way to the top of the charts is a jive bunny moment. It lasts for 1 minute. Staying
Yeah.
there for a long term is Madonna, Coldplay, U2, and that each one of them, whether they admit it or not, has got something, which is they're savvy, they're smart, they're great business people. Just to say that I'm creative and that's all I do, it's just not good enough. Those days don't
Mm.
exist. Mick Jagger is as good a businessman as he is a performer. Um,
Yes.
so you do need that. And when I started out, I thought what I wanted to do was production, was record production. That was what I thought my access point to the industry would be. Naive
Yeah.
13, and I kind of flew through the rest of school at the oratory school, getting really good grades because the pressure was off. There was no pressure. I knew what I wanted to do. I didn't have to get an O level or a GCSE or an A level to get to uni. I don't need
Mm.
you. I need to be able to make tea.
Yeah.
I really do. And I need to work hard, and I need to fit in, and I need to put my head down when an artist is being a bitch, and that's male or female. And I need to just to stick the hours out because it was ridiculous. It was 10 a.m. until 4 in the morning. It was 3 hours
Yeah.
sleep, and
Yeah.
getting the night bus home. So I knew what was needed. And actually, when that pressure is off a 14-year-old and 15, 16-year-old, I flew through and got the most bizarre grades. I mean, I failed miserably at maths. It's something that I'm shocking at to this day. If it wasn't for a calculator, I'd be in big trouble.
Mm.
And a good accountant, but that's a different story. And I flew through it and got A and B grades because the pressure was off me. I remember sitting one time with my careers advisor who had this big book of, manual of, we're going back to sort of the late 80s now. And opened up the book and said, "So, what do you want to be? What do you want to be?" And I said, "Well, I know what I'm going to be." And it was just sort
Yeah.
of this, okay, well, what do you stood penning the pages? Is he doctor? Is it lawyer? I'm going to be a record producer. And I just, it was wonderful seeing this, woefully unprepared
Totally
university.
through him.
Yeah, looking through. Well, that's not here.
Yeah. Does that come under P or does it come under R? Yes.
I've no idea, or C for cocky. And and he couldn't find it. And I told him what I was going to be, and literally he looked at me and said, "Well, this meeting's finished. Okay, can I go now? Because I've got to go and listen to something on my Walkman that's more important."
Mm.
And I kind of went off and knew what I was going to do and flew through. And in that gap year between, I got in because I got really good grades. I decided that, look, I was going to have a fallback from my parents. I was going to have that. So I wrote and went to Richmond College, which was again another really good college next to Twickenham Rugby Ground, and I studied French, economics, English literature. That quite a random selection of things to do, but they didn't have tweaking woofers or reverb effects on an SM58 mic. They didn't have that, so. So I applied, and in that summer, I remember, there was no internet. There was very little sort of resource books that one could buy.
Yeah.
I remember sitting in the library in London and finding a Music Week directory, and I wrote 150 letters to every
Wow.
recording studio in Britain. I remember writing one up in Glasgow, thinking, if I ever get this, how am I going to get to Glasgow? My mum won't let me go to to Glasgow. It's, and I wrote 150 letters and I was horrified. I didn't get one response. I thought, well, it was a great letter. I'll make tea, I'll clean toilets, I'll do anything. I love music. Here's my top 10 records of all time, my great top 10 artists, etc., etc. Top 5 probably. And I didn't get anything back. So I went to college. And I actually really enjoyed it. I enjoyed that sense of freedom that college allowed, that a strict Catholic uniform, all single-sex boys' school didn't. I mean, there was girls in the class. I mean, that was just, that blew my mind because we didn't have that. It was, we still had caning at our school. And detention, if your tie was undone, the button was undone, if you put your bag on your shoulder, detention. I mean, it was just so nonsensical. We look at it now and think, we'll never go back to that way again.
Well, we hope not.
One would know, yes, you never know the way the world's going at the moment in an Orwellian sense. But so I went and had great times, and I loved the 3 months that I was at college. And I say 3 months because I got a letter back. And one studio, and it happened to be in Soho.
Oh, on your doorstep.
Happy days, Catholic boy gets to go and play in Soho.
Well, you had 3 months trial at college.
Yeah, well, that really was a trial compared to some of the things that happened in the studio. But I got an interview, and I went to the basement recording studio, and they had the Trident desk that Pink Floyd recorded "Dark Side of the Moon" on, and I remember going and being interviewed by this. I mean, I'll change the names to protect the innocent. But with Mark St. John, no, yeah, and he was the drummer in the Pretty Things, and he was a very strange chap who I bumped into recently actually, and I know him quite well, and so he's fine. But he did have a sort of strange way of interviewing people that was a bit leery, and. Anyway, and I went down into the basement, and it's on Wardour Street, so it's in the centre of everything. And I think I literally just touched this desk and went, that's where Gilmour touched that. That's where the Waters of Vader there. And I'm literally doing it, and he's watching me going, very strange behaviour from a 17-year-old boy. But I got the job, and I started pretty quickly. And, and I had to tell my parents that I was no longer going to be a lawyer, which is what we'd always thought, because I could argue the top of anybody. And that's what kind of where that was my fallback plan, was to do that. And so off I go. But I didn't have the balls to tell my parents that I wasn't going to college. So they didn't know. And I was going off. Instead of getting the train to Twickenham, I was going off on the Piccadilly line to go and work there. And I'm coming back at 3 a.m. after a session. And I remember sort of my mum saying, oh, bless you, you're out with your schoolmates. You're out having a party. You don't smell
having a good time.
You don't smell of booze. No, I'm not drinking, And it was just bizarre. I couldn't tell her. And it was kind of like... that guy in the Full Monty that won't tell his wife he's lost his job and goes to the job centre every day, gets dressed up and does it. It was a bit like that.
It's a good job there was no uniform at Richmond College, isn't it? Because then you could arrive at the office in your blazer and tie.
Well, actually, I mean, interestingly, one of the first acts I worked with was with the Motorhead spin-off Girls' School, a very hard rock act. It would have looked good with that uniform.
Yeah.
I remember the opening track. I'm not. Can you swear on this or not?
Well, yeah, go on. It's called Real Lives, and people swear. So
yeah, no. Well, the first track I ever did was a track called 1 2 Fuck You, and it was the first day I was in there, and I had no idea what the track was called. And they said, "Should we do it?" Yeah. And it starts with the drummer doing a click above the head, and it was 1 2 fuck you, like this. I was like, whoa, okay, boys school, you've gone. I've crossed to the back.
I've arrived. Yeah.
Oh,
so when you did tell your mum, what did she say? She was horrified, really horrified about it. Thought I was throwing my life away. And in fact, it really wasn't until
about 20, no, it wasn't until about 10, 15 years later when I'd sort of had my first number one album and had been able to, to really have some sort of what I would say measured success, not necessarily for me, but for campaigns I'd worked on and artists I was looking after. It was only really then I think that she ever accepted it. I'm sure she'll say differently. If she sees this, I'm sure she'd say, no, we supported you all along. But I don't remember it that way. And it's my story and it's great. So I'm still
absolutely. And then, everybody has a different perspective on everything in life. So how long did you go to the studio instead of college and before you told her? How long?
3 months seems to ring a bell.
Right.
And what happened was, which is really interesting, is that, and this was kind of a real junction, a real crossroads, is there was a job going at the studio. So I was tape op, which meant that, I set up the studio before the sessions. That meant emptying the bins, cleaning everything up, zeroing the desk, which means you're at the end of every session, if it's not a continuous session, you zero all the settings, the myriad of settings. You get the tape ready to go. But it was that job. You're basically an assistant. It's a studio assistant role. But the wonderful thing about that job is that if a session finished earlier, we were allowed to play around and record things ourselves. And I remember banging drums in cupboards and listening to the different reverb effects. And it's something that, picking up a guitar in a corridor makes a completely different sound to doing it in a studio with muffled insulation on it. And, recording and listening and doing mixes of songs of tapes that we had already that the artists didn't know about, literally putting on. I remember one time they were doing the Pretty Things album, and one of the tracks was a song called "God Give Me the Strength," and Dave Gilmour from Pink Floyd actually did the guitar solo, and I remember sitting playing with that guitar solo, just putting different effects on it too. I think I must have done it for 6 hours, just playing with this, fading it in and out, guitar solo, putting different effects, panning it left, panning it right. It was amazing. It was really good. But what happened was. And I thought I'm well on my way to learning. I was a quick learner. I was picking it up. But somebody offered me the job of studio manager. 17. Studio manager. But it's very much not being in the studio. It's in the studio, but it's in the office above. It's not in the studio.
Not hands-on.
But it was money. And this is really interesting. So this was an offer of, instead of £10 a week, this was sort of £50 a week or something. And, it was a big pay rise and it was a big job. And I took it. And I still to this day don't know why. I mean, I'm convinced in anything that I do, I'll do a brilliant job. And I'm convinced I would have been a major global Grammy Award-winning record producer if I'd have stuck at this because I'm just tenacious. I won't give in until I win. I wear people down until they give me a gig. And for some reason, I left everything that I'd wanted to do, which was make music, and become an admin side of it. And I can't work out why I did it. I mean, I really can't work out to this day. And look, hey, it set me on a different course. It
took the opportunities, which I think is a good message to put across anyway. Be positive and take the opportunities.
I'm sure it was money. I can't remember, but I'm sure it was the chance to have more money in your pocket at the end of the week. I can't rationalize it at all, apart from being that, because it wasn't it was a job of having a big spreadsheet and writing it in and taking bookings and making, it was very much an admin role, which is not as exciting as making a record.
No.
So
but you wouldn't be where you are now if you hadn't done that.
Well, that's exactly. So there is a light at the end of every tunnel.
Yes.
And that's where it did lead. And actually from that, a record company came in. I remember it was around Halloween, just before Guy Fawkes night. And for anybody watching that isn't British, that's the 5th of November.
Yeah.
Is that right? 5th of November?
5th of November, yeah. Remember the 5th of November.
And somebody came in from a record company and said, had I ever thought about working for a record label before? You know, you'd be really good working in press or promotions or marketing. And then at the time, my mum was working at Chrysalis Records, and that was kind of the home of Sinead O'Connor, Billy Idol,
Yeah.
Spandau Ballet. You know, they had some pretty big acts that were on the Chrysalis record label at the time. And my mum got me an invite to the bonfire party that they had. They set off on the terrace in their office in West London. They set off fireworks, and I went there, and I kind of blagged myself a job in promotions. I don't know how. I don't know how it came up. I was attending it. I think Mum will probably say she invited me, so I hustled and got a proper job. But I mean, this is all sort of a year afterwards. I've got to be 18 at that
I would
point.
say you're 18, yeah.
Sort of
But again, you obviously just took the opportunities.
yeah. I mean, I think I was at the studio for about a year and a bit. And then it was 1990 November, bonfire night 1990, and I got offered a job in the promotions department, and you know I was national radio promotions, which meant I was a plugger to get the record on Radio 1, and
yeah,
I was 18. I think I was probably 17 or 18 at that point. Well, actually, I was 17 into 18. I got the job. I started in January. And no, I didn't. I started the next week. That was it. I quit the studio. I walked out of the studio. That was it. I walked out and started before Christmas because I went to the Christmas party. It was my first day there was the Christmas party.
It's a great first day. The best way to start a job.
I snugged a girl that worked in another department as well. And I only just walked in there. It was brilliant. I loved it. So, but yeah, so I started there, and that was amazing. I mean, that was suddenly going with records, and I was shadowing the head of the department. In fact, the ultimate boss is a guy called Judd Lander, who's still around now. Judd is a Liverpudlian record plugger that was responsible for ABBA in the UK. He's Paul McCartney's best mate. He played. He's played instruments on Karma Chameleon. He played the mouth.
Right. Yeah.
He's on all the Top of the Pop performances with them. But he's a plugger. He was in the studio with Boy George and the band, and they said, "You can play, can't you? Just put that on the track." You know, he did. He went on and was Crow on Saturday Superstore. Remember Crow, that weird puppet character? He's just the most extraordinary guy. He's still around now. And I was sort of working for him. And actually, it's the first time in my life where I ever thought, I'm out of depth here. I am very inexperienced for this job. I'm out of depth. What am I going to do? And it felt, and I think it's the only time I've ever really felt out of depth because I never wanted to feel that way again. I always wanted to pre-arm or learn more or just bluff and bravado my way through it. But I really felt out of depth. I thought, wow, I'm going to get caught out at any point here and they're going to realize that it's nothing but a mouth, which kind of is all that plugging is, really. But you do need strategic planning sensibilities to be a plugger. You need to go, all right, we're going to do this stunt at this time. It's going to tie in. And what I didn't have was that. I just had the great record. You should play it because it was that sale.
But it must have been a fantastic learning ground, and what you must have learned in that time. You must have gained those skills pretty rapidly.
Yeah, I mean, you do. You really have to. And I remember the opportunity. Everything in life is about seizing and waiting for that opportunity. And I remember my boss, Andy, at the time, she was ill. And it was down to me to go and service all the records and do the playlist meeting, the Radio 1 playlist meeting. And I remember that the record I had 2 records. She was off for a month, I think. She was quite poorly. She was quite sickly, poorly anyway.
Yeah.
And I remember one of the records was Chesney Hawkes, The One and Only. And the other was Kenny Thomas, Outstanding. And I'm still friends with Kenny and Chesney. And, I really felt an affinity with Chesney because he was my age. And
Yeah.
so, and he liked me. So I started taking him to all the HMV installs, um, uh, all the Radio 1 interviews, Radio 2, whatever we did, Greater London Radio as it was, GLR at the time, Capital Radio, with Chris Tarrant. And I started taking him around and started to then think, okay, I'm not out of my depth. I've been given this opportunity, and it's actually quite natural. It's just taking an artist and protecting them and making sure that they're not put in a position that they're uncomfortable or that shines a mediocre light on their stardom. And I can do that. I mean, that was easily done. And so I sauntered along doing that for a while. And I remember very clearly, I was up. We used to listen to the charts on Sunday night. I mean, we all
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And I got really high hopes that Chesney was going to go all the way to the top of the charts with the one and only. And we'd had a film premiere the week or 2 weeks before for a movie with Roger Daltrey called Buddy's Song that it came from, big Leicester Square premiere. And I was really confident it was going to work. And on the radio, it came out, and it was, and number 2 was whatever it was, and number 1 is Chesney Hawkes, the one and only. And I just remember I was at a family member's house. I remember jumping up and down, and it was just that feeling of your first number 1.
Yeah.
It was, I mean, I just remember it now as being the happiest moment of my life.
Yeah.
It was just, that's it. It's winning a gold medal. It's why Lewis Hamilton does every championship he does still. Why do the Stones still go on tour at age 170?
That moment, yeah.
It's that feeling. It's that feeling that is the drug that keeps you going to the next one, and it's that feeling of, this is what I'm meant to do. Everything kind of, and this is where the life story and the life summary kicks in. It is the pluses and the minuses, the ups and downs. I remember getting the train back that night, back to London, going in the office and being made redundant on the Monday morning.
Oh dear.
Because EMI had bought Chrysalis out about a month and a half before, and they were clearing out all of the promotions department. And I was like, where's the camera? This is a joke, right? I mean, this
candid camera, yeah.
What are you talking about? And it really happened like that. It was literally the next day, and I was gone, and I didn't have a job, and they gave me what I thought was a fantastic settlement for someone who'd been there for maybe 6 months.
Yeah.
But I was out of work, and I'd gone, and my immediate thing to do was not to write a million letters again, but it was to bugger off with the money and go around America. And so that was it. I sort of took the year's settlement that I got or whatever after 6 months work and went off and had a holiday, and then and then came back, and then it was time to do it, to really look at it. And that was kind of up to about 1992. That was the first 2 big jobs and the setup to those jobs.
Yeah, and I'd say you're only 20. So you're you must have learned so much in those 6 months that you were in the studio.
Yeah,
so you were still 18 when you were made redundant.
91, April 91. So I was 19 when I was made redundant.
Yeah. But you packed a lot in that time. You'd experienced, promoting a record to a number 1. You'd met so many people, been in so many different environments. You must have learnt so much.
I think so. I mean, look, I learn every day, Jackie. The day you stop learning is the day that you should retire and give in. You can never stop learning from people.
Absolutely agree.
Partly because that's just human emotion, that's human development. It's psychology. It's what it is. But also because I work in a world of, it's a people's game.
Yes.
You do as well, and it's very much that you have to listen and watch what other people are doing, and that's very, very similar to what you do. But it's very similar in my world because you've got to listen to trends. You've got to listen to what's the next act. I remember I remember being given an act, later on in my career, M people to look after, and I just thought, I really don't like M people. I think I've told the band this. I really couldn't stand Heather's voice. It grated me. It was dreadful disco pop, and I didn't like it. And I went on to be very successful with M people, and I learned to love them. Through it, but they were happening at the time. They were very hot. They were a very big British band. They were, and there were a lot of people listening to them. So you've got to, in this people's game, you've got to constantly, and even now I'm on TikTok. I'm 48 and I'm on TikTok. What on earth am I doing looking at TikTok? Well, because it's a major asset, a digital asset that artists are using to get to kids, to put that music out there. There's no other outlets anymore. There's no Top of the Pops. There's no people don't listen to radio. So you've got to constantly develop your skill set and sharpen and hone your skills onto what the new medium of the day is and what the new trend of music is. And you can never stop doing that. You've got to constantly focus.
Absolutely, totally agree. But what did you learn from touring around America for 2 years?
No, I mean, it really wasn't touring. It was just me backpacking.
No, that's what I meant. Just wandering around America for 2 years.
I don't think I learned anything. I did. That a British accent can get you anywhere in America. I mean, that's what I learned. It can talk your way into bars when you don't have a fake ID. It can get you anywhere, really. It can get you into Warner Brothers Records balcony to watch a performance by Prince. It can get you anywhere you want to go, really, if you just put that English accent to use.
Why did you leave America?
Ran out of money. Spent everything.
Okay.
Ran out of money, literally.
That's a good reason.
I started up on the East Coast at friends that were at colleges and experienced college life, and with a guy who I was in a band. I was a singer in a band years before that, and the keyboard player was at an American college, and I went on campus with him. Interestingly, he had a radio show. I mean, it's funny how we all kind of did music-y things, even though he's a political professor now at Columbia University in New York, but like second in charge of the whole politics department there. But he was a very good friend of mine, and I went and stayed with him, and he was running a kind of British indie music club that got a radio show on the college radio, and I was a guest on it a couple of times. And that was when Britain was having another renaissance. It was EMF, Jesus Jones. They were top of the US charts, and it felt in that early 90s that there was a big kind of movement happening again, and it didn't quite work out. It was to come about 4 years later, that big British invasion, the third invasion. But I hung out there. I hung out with friends, and then I went to the other coast and lived on the beach in San Diego with a guy that I'd met in a bar who said, "Yeah, man, come and shack up with us. We've got spare rooms." And kind of went and hung out with him and his mates, and that was great. Yeah, so it was literally just, I didn't even think about music at all. I mean, I was listening to music, but I didn't think about a career. I was just going to have my gap year, really.
Yeah, your time out.
I'd gone straight into work. I hadn't had that time out at all.
Yeah. So you landed back in London?
Yeah.
Obviously hungry to do something else as you were potless.
Yeah, and picked up the notepad and the pen again and wrote letters, and actually I have to give credit to my mum and my stepdad who had been, the whole time I was away, had been going into the newsagents to pick up Music Week to look at the jobs in the back, and had been writing it down and would send a letter to me saying, "Hey, there's a job going at EMI, you should apply." Too busy. I'm in San Diego on the beach. Go away. But when I came back, after a couple of weeks off, they pushed me to write a letter, and we're sort of up to, I think it's about May 1992 now. And one of the jobs that was on offer or that wanted was a job at MCP, Midland Concert Promotions, who at the time were the biggest concert promoters in Britain, and they were based in Walsall in near Birmingham. And they actually, MCP later became Live Nation. They were bought out and became Clear Channel and then Live Nation. And I was offered a job up there. Well, I went and did an interview first of all and met my first mentor, my first proper mentor, a concert promoter called Tim Parsons, who's now retired, lives in Cape Town, but I still call him boss to this day. You know, every time we talk, I still call him boss. He was an amazing concert promoter, responsible for U2, you know, every major act that we ever worked with. Him, Stuart Galbraith, who runs Kilimanjaro, who's very much an active promoter now, one of the big ones. It was a breeding ground for big promoters that were there. Chris York, who runs SJM now, Connell Dodds, and I went up there and I applied for the job. And I think the fact I actually my dad was, my biological father was living in Birmingham at the time, and the fact that I gave an address of Birmingham and I'd worked for a record company. This is what worked, I think, for it. That and my skill, you know, the ability to talk the hind legs off a donkey. But I think that worked because, and I blocked it and I put a Birmingham address on it, and they were like, "Wow, somebody has worked for a record company in Birmingham." You know, because everybody goes back to London. You know, everybody stays down there, so they've got one on their home turf. And I remember them telling me after I got the job, I had a great interview and they offered me the job, and then I had to move and pack a bag, literally pack bags and move up to Birmingham and get a flat in Birmingham and start life afresh there. And I remember them telling me that there was a guy who had come for the job interview as well. And because music jobs in the West Midlands were few and far between, and on that scale, you know, the largest concert promoter in Britain. I mean, first of all, it's bizarre that they're not in London, but they're in Birmingham. But the reason they're in Birmingham is because it's the centre of Britain. If you're promoting concerts, you've got one in Glasgow, you don't want to be in London, right? Nor you've got Newcastle, you don't want to be. And also the motorways all meet in Birmingham. So I never quite understood. And Walsall was exactly that reason. It's the fusion between the M5 and the M6. So there was
it's quite a logical reason to be there.
A logical reason, but there's I think one band, the Wonder Stuff, have come from Walsall. So it wasn't like they were setting up in, you know, Denmark Street, Timpan Alley in London, or in Liverpool on Matthew Street. It wasn't that. So I got the job, and I remember them telling me that there was another guy that was really close to it, and he'd come in and he'd actually, in the back of his head, as he'd done the interview, and in the back of it, he had an afro, and in the back of his afro, as he turned to walk away, he'd actually carved the letters MCP into his head, the back of his afro, and walked out. I mean, I thought he should have got the job.
And he didn't get the job, you know.
He didn't get the job, but I got the job.
Well, then you probably shouldn't be so modest and accept that you got the job on your skills and personality.
I should have shaved my head. I've been doing it ever since now. If I ever go for a job interview, I'm going to carve the name of it somewhere in me. I thought that was brilliant. I mean, that's actually, you know, that sort of sandwich board marketing. It's grassroots, but it's brilliant.
Yeah.
And so I joined, and I was then working with a colleague of mine, Paul Flower. We were working together on some of the biggest stadium and smaller shows in Britain. You know, Crowded House, Simply Red, Monsters of Rock Festival, U2. You know, all the biggest acts we were working with. And I remember I started on June the 1st, 1992. It's a great day to start, isn't it? June the 1st, start of summer. And June, the first tour that we had was Guns N' Roses' Use Your Illusion 2 tour. And I'd been tipped off that Axl was a bit of a nightmare to deal with, and that he'd blocked himself into the Georges V Hotel in Paris with his girlfriend at the time, and this all came out. He actually barricaded himself in. He had a mental breakdown, and we had a gig at Main Road, Manchester, that night, and he wasn't coming out. And I remember I made the fatal mistake of picking the phone up when the Daily Mail and everybody phoned us up and asked for a comment. And this is a bit of advice. They said, "Oh yeah, you know, can I have a comment on it?" And I was like, "Yeah, well, at the moment the shows are on. All tickets are valid, but of course, if not, we'll give a full refund." I mean, I wasn't authorized to say this, Can we have your name? Yeah, you can. It's Richard Beck. So the next day,
Oh,
the third of like the second day in the job, my name is in all the newspapers as a spokesperson, and they called me in and they went, okay. First of all, never say you're getting a full refund, okay? Okay, just don't say that at this point. And secondly, don't give your name. Don't ever give your name. Just say I'm a spokesperson. You know, it was very political, you know, and I learned a good lesson then. Never.
Well, at least
never,
you weren't sacked for saying you're going to give everybody a full refund.
Yeah, they did cancel the show, and anyway, I went on and had a great long stretch with them. In the concert promoting world. Really thoroughly enjoyed it. Found a mentor, friend for life there, and had great time. I mean, I remember that was probably the happiest of my life that I've ever been. That period, that period in time, they gave me a company car. I got Reg the Renault, which was my battered out £500 car. And they gave me a brand new Sierra, a red Sierra. And I just thought I'd made it. I didn't have to pay for it anymore. The car was serviced, and I would do a day in the office at about 4:00. I'd jump in the car, drive down to London, watch a gig in London at the Town and Country Club or wherever we were promoting it, and drive home, get home at 3 a.m, and get up and go to work at 9 o'clock the next morning. And I did this for 5 years, and it was brilliant. I'd be in Newcastle, come home, you know, just driving up and down to see the shows, to work at them. You know, I'd find work for me to do at them. But it was really just to kind of be there. And I started to work with a lot of managers at that point, get close to managers, and started to get close to artists. And you know, one artist at the time who I did get really close to and we became friends was Michael Hutchins from In Excess, who became a very good friend of mine all the way up until his death. And you know, that was through that exposure. That's kind of where I started to really know what artists needed and what artists wanted, not just through Hutch, but through all the artists that I was dealing with. I was entrusted by Tim. He called me Dickie Boy, and he really said, you know, you can't do this, you can do this. You know, I remember, you know, working with Bono at one of the shows at Roundhay Park, and, you know, sort of the band walking on stage and Bono waving to me, you know, as he went on stage. It's kind of these moments you think, wow, you know, this is kind of really going somewhere now. It felt I was being appreciated, felt I had responsibility, felt I was empowered, and I was loving it. I mean, there's nothing better. There still isn't anything better in this world than a full stadium that you've helped to make full.
Absolutely. And you say you don't have responsibility, but you've used that word quite a lot throughout your discussion about your career. So yeah, and it's quite a career.
Yeah, it was. You know, the concert promoting bug was in me. From there, my next logical step was management. Was to get into management, and I was, very lucky. I'd started off doing publicity for a lot of acts, and Shania Twain was one of them, and Janet Jackson, and them people, and a lot of different acts and big events, and I'd started off doing that, and eventually I knew that management was where I wanted to end up, and I took a lot of those artists with me. Midge Ure was another one that I took with me. Shania came with me, and I ended up working with John Landau, who's probably the second big mentor in my life. And John, who was just last week or 2 weeks ago inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in America, which is something that's normally reserved for Jimi Hendrix and Bob Dylan. But he's been inducted as Bruce Springsteen's producer and an artist manager, and he's managed, Train, Natalie Merchant, Bruce, Shania, and John Landau was a guy that entrusted me to look after Europe for his artists. So for a very long time, I was looking after Europe for Shania, for him, and Bruce. And another great mentor. I mean, an incredible operator. Just could, there's nothing that he couldn't persuade you to do. Whether
Mm,
you're a record label executive or an artist, the
mm.
passion that these guys, and I've often thought, to be really credible in the music business, you have to have a New York accent. You really do have to have that. Because
I think you have to have the passion. Do you not think?
when they talk about the record, they always say the record. And you ever just go and Google a John Landau interview, and JONLANDAU. And they go, when we made this record with Bruce, and it's like you just buy into it. It's like I'm there. I'm in the record studio in 1978 with you. I can feel it, and that was wonderful. And and interestingly, after 10 years in management, and I still manage artists, I still have them. It was really time after 10 years to go back to that one love. That the road called me back. The live music side, it was always there. Dealing with artists and managing artists is very focused. It's very focused. You're dealing with one person for, I was with Shania for 7 years, literally 7 years by her side, Midge for more than that. And you are their business advisor, you're their confidant, you're their nanny, you're their security guard, you're their accountant, you're their Boutros Ghali, their diplomat. The skill sets that you need as a manager, you're their forward planner, you're their backward rear mirror, you're their safety belt, you're their airbag. I mean, you're everything. And you're their drinking buddy when they want you to be. And working with artists, it does become claustrophobic after a while. I mean, 7 years with Shania, and it reached the point where we couldn't do anymore. We'd sold 55 million records. We just couldn't go any further. This is it. It's kind of come to an end, and it's only going to go downhill from here. And we made the remarkable decision to separate after all the success, and we're still very good friends. We still talk twice a year. But it was right. It was the right time. But at the time, it seemed like I was giving up. People said, "You're bonkers." I mean, why? Cash cow. But it just wasn't there. The challenge wasn't there anymore to do anything more.
Sounded like you got out at the right time on a high, which, if you do it right, that is a good time to get out.
It is a good time. And it was also this calling, Jackie, to get back into live music, which is where I am now. It's come full circle. And this will be it now. There's no more, stings in the tail or spins. This is it. Where I am now with my live music business, which is a global business with Apollo World Touring.
Yeah.
Where we stage large stadium concerts around Formula One events and around host cities, and we have a media platform that comes with it as well, which will be available, when this pandemic ends. Plus the other work that I do in promoting shows in the United Kingdom. That's me done now. I mean, I'm happy to reach this point and to put this level of pressure that I have on me at the moment. There's no more career changes for me now. I mean, it's all within music, but I have to say that the difference between an artist manager and a concert promoter, you'd think, looking at it from the outside in, you'd think, well, it's the same thing, right? But it isn't. It's like the difference between a brain surgeon and an osteopath. Yeah, okay, it's all medical, but it's totally different. When I got back into live music, I had to learn everything again. It was just this point of I needed a new challenge. I had to learn how to negotiate a deal on an hourly basis. With an artist, you negotiate a deal once a month. A record label once every 4 or 5 years. As a concert promoter, you're doing 4 or 5 deals a day. And the great thing about concerts, why it's completely opposite artists, is that you do your work. You're at a distance from all the hype and all of the whirlwind that is an artist and its entourage when it's on tour. But you meet them at the venue as they rock up on the tour bus. You say hi. you go off to your production office, you see them on stage, you have a glass of champagne with them afterwards, you go woohoo, and you wave goodbye as that tour bus goes off. Done. I can do 100 of you a year, guys, but living with and breathing and traveling with one artist in that claustrophobic environment, it's a very different world. And I love that whole transient nature of it turning over with a different turn coming through the door the next day.
Yeah, yeah. Keeps you busy, keeps you interested. The variety is your thing.
It does, and you feel free. You don't feel claustrophobic. Different city, different venue, different artist. I don't know if I could ever go back to that entire world again of doing one-on-one management. It's very intense relationship. You spend more time with your manager than you do your husband or wife.
Yeah.
As an artist, and vice versa. And I remember, being with Shania was a real challenge for partners as well. Because it was a very small entourage that we had. It was 3 or 4 of us. I mean, we're the biggest selling female artist on the planet. And she just used to put a hoodie on and walk down Kensington High Street or down the Champs-Elysees. Nobody would know who she was. Now, if Madonna did that, there's 100 people around her. But Shania definitely didn't. And it was 4 or 5 of us that went on the road with her. That was it. Her assistant, a makeup artist, no security, me and John Landau or Barbara Carr. And, it was a very different world. It was intense. It was one-on-one. It was planning. It was hotels, conversations in the back of a car. It was just full on. I remember one year, 1999, I went back home to London 6 days in an entire year. It was totally different. So, those days for me have gone. That level of intensity and commitment to one person has gone, and now it's much more of a butterfly existence with shows, and that's how I like it.
Yeah. But the pandemic must have had an impact on what you're doing at the moment, for sure.
It's decimated our industry.
Yeah.
It absolutely decimated it. My last year was setting up and working on a new business, which is to host these large scale concerts around the world at Formula One and major events, sporting events, cultural events, etc. And we've established an incredibly great team of people for this new venture, very well funded. We're gonna come into the business and shake it up a bit. And we've got multiple events lined up, the first of which being at the first Grand Prix of the year in Melbourne, Australia in March of this year. We had Miley Cyrus, Robbie Williams, Little Nas X, Pete Murray, lots of really big named acts, domestic and international. And 4 hours before the gates were open, we were forced to cancel because one member of the McLaren Formula One team got a positive COVID. They pulled the whole thing down, and huge overreaction and unnecessary, as is everything that's happening with this pandemic. It is, we will look back on this, and I'm all for health and safety, don't get me wrong. We follow the rule books, but we'll look back on this and think, why did we do it that way? That's actually the wrong way. Locking up 95% of a population and stopping them from working and wanting to work because of 5% of the population, it doesn't make any sense to me. Don't matter how many times you tell me, I don't get it. There's other ways we've dealt with this. Unfortunately, governments are not scientists, and the only country that's got it right is Sweden, where the politicians are not allowed to make health decisions. Scientists make health decisions. And it's interesting to see how that's worked. But it's decimated my industry. I mean, in the UK alone, there's 170,000 people lost their jobs. That's about half. Half an industry wiped out. I mean, I remember in the old days, there was general strikes for one coal pit being shut down. One coal face went, and there was a national strike with all the unions. There's half an industry gone. Nearly 200,000 people. There's no end in sight for us. I mean, we're looking at not being able to do anything until Q4 2021. That will be 1.5 years without income, 1.5 years without live music. That has a cultural effect on people. That's a game changer.
It is.
We as a business are nimble and have set ourselves up enough doing things like broadcast events to keep the bad men at bay. But it's not just about us and about money. It's about that hole that's left in a generation of what they've not been able to do.
Yeah.
That's what's bad. I mean, there will be. I mean, I'm seeing in the markets where they're opening up. A friend of mine is a promoter for Guns N' Roses in Australia, and they just went on sale in Australia with a November 21 tour of Guns N' Roses, and it's sold out in record time. It's sold out in. It's sold out in Sorry about that.
It's all right.
It's sold out in absolutely record time, and that leads me to believe that there is a real market for this. There's a real desire and wish to go and see live entertainment, because if you can sell out a stadium in a few minutes for an act that, let's face it, they haven't probably sold out a stadium in a while. It's a really good example of an indicative, I hope, of where we'll be at when we are allowed to get to do it.
Well, you can just hope that it comes back even stronger, I say, because I think people will be desperate to catch up on everything that's been missed over the last.
Stop it, Becky. You can't stop that connection that gigs give to people.
Yeah.
Sitting listening to Sunday Bloody Sunday in your bedroom is fine, but going to Wembley Stadium and seeing Sunday Bloody Sunday live is, it won't end, despite the damage that they've done to the industry. It won't end, and I remain very positive about the future. I believe that this disruption will make a much better level playing field for companies and organizations like mine. Live Nation and AEG were running away with this business. We've leveled the playing field a bit. We've taken the steam off them for a few years, where we can actually try and catch up. So I'm extremely optimistic about the future. I think if you're nimble enough to be in a place where you are still standing and able to sell tickets, and there's a lot of people that are not. I am, luckily, we are, touch wood, able to do that still. But I think we can come back stronger and better, and I absolutely now see a light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah. It's just unfortunate that light is still a year away because it's not just, are we able legally? Does a government admin guy say, you can go in a field? It's actually, is mum going to let their 14, 15-year-old girl in a field or boy to go and do it? That consumer effect is devastating as well. Because
it's a trust, isn't it? Then as a society, we've lost trust, and we have to gain trust, and we've got to gain trust again with each other, because that's a bit that's been damaged. It's the trust of the person that you pass in the street. Yeah. And that will take time to build again.
And when you're in a festival, you are very close, jumping up and down to 50, 60,000 people.
Yeah.
How are we going to deal with that again? How are we ever going to do that? There's going to be people that are going to expect mask wearing. Mask wearing, by definition, takes away your identity. And it will have, it's going to take a long time before festivals and large-scale events are fun, where we can throw off the mask and go, woohoo,
Yes, I agree. Totally agree.
Confidence has been shattered in large-scale events. So it's a long way to go. But, music will survive. I have no doubt. Not even one doubt, not one piece of doubt, not one shred of doubt that music will survive.
Music will survive isn't that a fantastic line to finish our fantastic interview on? I've really enjoyed talking to you. It's been great. I would just like to ask you one question, because you have talked very openly about your career. If there was a young person wanting to embark on a music career or any sort of career in the music industry, what's the one piece of advice that you would give to them? Put you on the spot now.
You have. I mean, I used to have an answer for that, Becky. I used to say, don't be in the music business. Don't go and do it. And that's because the music industry, for a very long time, you weren't able to have a career in. The recorded side with piracy, streaming, we've been lost for 10 years. But after this pandemic, I've changed my view on it all now. It's too important to not try and follow your dreams now. It's too important. If you want to be that person that's in the music business, don't let anybody tell you can't do it. Write 150 letters to every studio. Go and make tea. Put the hours in and have that dream firmly there ahead of you, like a carrot in front of you, and go for it. Just don't let anything stop you. My view has changed. I would, a year ago, I would have told people, go and do something else. Have a fallback plan. Go and do it. Now I'm like, nah, go and do it. Life's too short to not go for your dreams.
But that is an excellent piece of advice for absolutely everybody. It's not just the music industry. It's everybody should follow that piece of advice.
Yeah.
No matter what they want to do in their lives.
I think we all know that now, that life's too short.
Yeah.
We've had a really big reality check. We were running away with ourselves as a human species for a long time, and I think we've had a reality check. And now I just want people to be happy again. We've been tortured for a while. Not for many generations have we been tortured. I worry greatly about the kids, the effect of that hole that there'll be on their lives, of education and of that. So you know what? Dreams make you happy. Dreams get you up in the morning. Dreams are what gives you that vision to continue when it gets tough.
Yes.
Keep those dreams alive. Go for it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Fantastic. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed talking to you. And for everybody that's listening, watching, if you want to see more, please subscribe, hit the notification bell, and we'll see you on the next one. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.